Hello, lovely podcast people. I hope you're well. I am recording this as a post-podcast recording intro. So this is actually a podcast I recorded 2 months ago. And the time has come to release this podcast. And it's just, I just had it in the bank. It's not one that was particularly important. You know, often I just record them when I get them out to you. But this one, which is a bit of a rant, but a positive one with what I want to be a positive message. I want to encourage something I put on my story recently on Instagram. Encourage thinking. Encourage people to think more, critical thinking, think more deeply. I just like that. I'm a natural teacher. I don't know if that's a good way of putting it, but I just have a pastoral side. I don't know if that's quite the right word. It's got too much of a religious connotation, but you know what I mean. Anyway, let me get into it. The intent of this podcast is supposed to be very, very positive. What I'm trying to do is encourage my people, and there are very few of my people because my people are right in the middle, but there are people who maybe relate to me in the health and fitness industry who I think I can speak to and help to bring them more towards a balanced way of thinking and stop them. You know, they're more my people than the pure social justice warrior types who would never see me as someone worth listening to and, you know, whatever. There are obviously some hardcore fitness industry bodybuilder types. I go on Instagram today. I ended up owning him with a your mum joke. But he just said, there's no way I'd take advice from someone who looks like you. To me, I'm just like, geez. And then next comment down is this girl going, do you think with all your knowledge on nutrition and strength training and fat loss that you're a judgmental person? I was like, what does knowledge and being judgmental got to do with anything? Oh, so bizarre, isn't it, social media? Anyway, you know, I've got really positive intent. And this is why I'm releasing this podcast now, is because I just happened to talk this week about Karens and people. People have got the ability, if they want to see the intent of something, to see it. But people just choose not to because they're hurt, because they want to be heard, because they just want to start fights, they've got nothing better to do, etc., etc. They've just got big chips on their shoulder, those kind of things. People can see the intent. You can read my post, you can read the caption. Sometimes I will, you know, certain posts, I will be being ranty and I'll be upset or I'll be, you know, just annoyed at certain types and I'll be like, ketones and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I get it. If someone's, you know, doing keto and it's changed their life because they're epileptic, or I'm giving out to people who are pretend gluten intolerant, you know, oh, I have to eat gluten intolerant, and, you know, taking the mickey out of them, then people go, you know, it's really annoying for me because when I order gluten-free meals, the restaurant thinks I'm just being one of these faddy people, but I've actually got celiac disease, for instance. And I'm like, you know what, you know, I don't mean to trigger you. And Ricky Gervais says this. He's not someone who goes, you know, if someone goes, I'm offended, he goes, oh, F off. You know, it's a joke, get over it. He says, you know, I want to explain to them often why it's not offensive. And this podcast, it mentions a lot about snowflakes and whatever. And that's what's come up this week. I did a post about overfeeding women was in the title. But I'm talking about the difference between overfeeding men and women. But it was a short title on a video. And some people who identify as feminists have taken issue with it. We're not pets. You don't feed us. Can you reword this? Oh my goodness, you self-righteous gimp. Someone else. OMG, really? Overfeeding? You make us sound like cattle. You make us like, oh, yeah, me and all the other women who agree with me. No one agrees with you, Karen. No one cares. None of the other intelligent women who follow me read it like that. And so this is the thing, right? And I'm going to read you this because I actually got a very polite DM from someone who's actually open to conversation. Now, she's wrong. I'm going to explain why she's wrong as a preface to this podcast. Because it all just goes together, right? And I'm just trying to encourage thinking here. And I also am open to the fact of being wrong. Like, I understand that there are times when I'll offend someone. Actually, I didn't want to. I talk about that, I think, in this podcast, about the R word, r-word.org. Go look it up if you want. I talk about that. I don't try to be offensive on purpose, but when people take offense and just are being snowflakes. So I did this thing about whatever. She says, I am a woman and I was not offended by this, but can acknowledge it could have been worded better. First thing that she says is incorrect, because I am talking about research, and in research I've used the wording they use in the research that I am disseminating to the masses for free on social media. Anyway, let me carry on. Someone else, so I also put on my story, someone said, you're not being insensitive. She's just uneducated. That's what it says in the research. And then someone else said, oh, but you're actually putting out on social media where people are uneducated on this stuff. Yeah, so read the caption, dummy. Like, go and look at what the intent is. Don't just read the title of a video and comment just to be nasty and be a gimp. Go and read it. Oh, he's talking about the research in women where they overfeed them. Oh, they're subjects. Oh, you do overfeed subjects in a study, men and women. It's not that women are lesser beings and they're cattle to be fed by their masters, the men. You gimps. They're subjects in a study. Listen, read. This is, I'm going to go on with this. It's your page, so do what you want. Good, thank you very much. But intent does not typically outweigh how another perceived something. Now, this is another place where she is wrong. It does not typically outweigh. Based on what? Based on your opinion. So then she goes on to say, for example, if I say a joke to my friend and they find it offensive or rude, it wouldn't matter if I meant it that way. I would have two options. Tell them I didn't intend it that way, so get over it. Or I could apologize. Yes, again, that's your friend. You have a choice whether your friend's going to be upset with you and you hear them. Again, in a relationship, same thing. You do something, it offends them. Oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean it that way. Fine. This is social media. I am giving out free content which you are choosing to consume. Your feelings don't matter more than the intent. It's your feelings. Your feelings are not my responsibility. Now, if I am being direct, if the intent is to be offensive, or if I am attacking something about you, then that's offensive. And anyone can agree on that. But when I'm giving out free content, not free content that I can then be nasty with, as in free helpful content with the pure intent to educate and help. So the dozens and dozens of messages I received about this were all, thanks so much, you're helping to dispel these myths. You're helping, certain women to put off training because of the bulking element of this, that and the other. Thank you so much. You can see the intent, blah, blah, blah. This is the point. It's the Ricky Gervais thing of you go down the street, someone's selling guitar lessons, and you shout, I don't want guitar lessons, right? Just carry on. It's not for you. Walk on. And then seeing the phone number and calling them up and saying, are you selling guitar lessons? They say, yeah. And you go, I don't want guitar. It doesn't matter. Unfollow, leave. Or if you want the helpful free content, because people do unfollow me, they would rather not read over what happens when you overfeed women on a video than to just get over it and keep consuming the free expert advice. And then they will cry and moan when I did a fed diet and I got ripped off and I spent this money and nobody helped me. And how are they allowed to do this? Karen or Masoon, whatever his name was, the other gimp that I called out about his mum taking it. My advice, that is. Don't cry and moan if you're going to be your own worst enemy. I'm there being nice, being helpful, and you're choosing to take offense. Now, you can listen more in this podcast about various different things, because I do try often to have compassion and understand, just she's hurt for whatever reason. She's this way because of what society's done to her, or previous relationships done to her, or parents have done to her. But it doesn't outweigh personal responsibility, and I go into that in the podcast. Anyway, moving on with this, it's a beautiful thing to acknowledge that there are times better way to do things regardless of your intent. Just because you didn't intend harm doesn't mean that you didn't. Harm. I wrote the word overfeeding. It's not harm. I agree with that statement. It's just dumb in this context. Me saying overfeeding women doesn't harm anyone. Someone being so stupid that they think selling stupid weight loss pills, that they mean well. I call them well-meaning idiots. You can go back over a decade. I've been using this term, well-meaning idiots. And it's most people giving nutrition advice on the internet. Just well-meaning idiots. Oh, I did this and it really helped me. Jordan Peterson, who I think is fantastic, is a well-meaning idiot when it comes to nutrition. He says dumb things when it comes to nutrition. He just needs to stay in his lane, because he's very good at his lane. Anyway, so harm. Yes, I agree. Lots of people don't intend harm, but they are still causing it. Fine. And that's not good. But hurting someone's feelings is not harm. Someone going, I didn't like the way you made me sound like a pet, is not harm. And likewise, it is your duty to go out and find the intent first. Oh, I didn't know it was about a study. Because you didn't watch the video or read the caption, you gimp. God, I think this is the most worked up I've been. I actually turned down the gain on my mic before this, so I'm kind of glad. Sorry for the shoutiness. But genuinely, I want any of my followers, because I know there are lots of people who are intelligent enough to go, you know what, Martin grates on me sometimes. I don't agree with him sometimes. I think he's a bit self-righteous or a bit of a know-it-all sometimes. But his content is fantastic on nutrition and it's helpful. I'm not going to unfollow him because of that. And so it's some of you people I'm talking to just go, please listen to this. The way I read these DMs and listen and talk, I've had some great conversations with people who have slightly differing views, who are just reasonable human beings. I think she finishes there. I'm not offended by your post. I've been following for a couple of years. Just want to have a different perspective. So anyway, I got some other messages about feminist this, feminist that. Oh, you shouldn't say toxic feminism. Yes, I should, because it's disgusting the way that this stuff is going on, the way that people are so uneducated. I've educated myself on feminism and I've looked at it and I've become woke on the subject, and I've changed as a result. But I've not been one-sided like most gimps are. Oh, women this, women that, women don't get a good break in anything. Wrong. Go and do the other side of the research, you gimps. Equality, fantastic. But the way most people go about this stuff is wrong. You're just taking offense for the sake of taking offense because you're butthurt for whatever reason, because of life. And I go into this episode talking about obesity and people being overweight and having higher levels of body fat. And I talk about compassion for those people because society is nasty. Society is affecting me. And I'm doing my very best. There's a great quote. I don't know who said it, sorry. But essentially it's, you can only be harmed if you allow your character to be changed. And I actually think I spoke about that on an earlier podcast. And I keep that in mind often because you can get beaten down by paying attention to these gimps. And I have to pay attention because they're constantly there in my comments and my DMs, etc. I don't let them get me down in terms of, oh, this person said that I'm not jacked, or this person said that I'm nasty, or this person said I'm a narcissist. Like, get over it. You don't even know what a narcissist is, you moron. What's her name? Lisa Billieux? She's the founder of Quest Bar. She's super cool. Women of Impact is one of her accounts. And she did this interview about, just because you don't like someone doesn't make them a narcissist. Like, everyone just throws this term narcissist about. It's so dumb. Anyway, so this podcast, having compassion for these people, because society's nasty. And I keep telling myself, like, don't let it change my character. Don't make it make me anti anything. Like, allow, don't come with this bias. Don't get a chip on my shoulder because of all these nasty people out there. And I encourage you all to do the same. And I encourage you all to be good listeners, to listen. This podcast goes into health at every size, body acceptance. Because I see people who I think have good hearts out there getting upset and fighting back against people who are trying to promote body positivity. And I want you to, first listen. Just, 2 ears, 1 mouth. 2 eyes, 1 mouth. Listen, watch, observe, inform yourself. Don't just jump in. No, you're promoting obesity and everyone's going to die. That's not what a lot of the body positivity movement is. Society has screwed people. Diet culture has screwed a lot of people. A lot of people need to heal in many, many, many ways before they start focusing on tracking your protein. Which I'm not against either, just at the right time. I'm just going to finish with this. I just got so many messages from people, and I just want to thank those people verbally. So many messages from people of support for kind of not tiptoeing around some of these subjects, for standing up against this, because it is this horrible toxic culture where you can be nasty to people based on their colour and gender and body fatness and size and get away with it. Like there's a lot of, I'm going to call them chavs. I don't know if that's going to offend anyone. I don't care. But there's a lot of people who just, I'm going to say it, right? This is my privilege talking, I guess. From poor upbringings who just don't see any wrong in just being plain nasty if someone is fat or, people who don't realise that being racist is wrong. I mean, that's mental, isn't it? But, people being nasty because people are male or female, I don't know, being nasty to people with disabilities, people who don't realise that so many things that just, I feel like it's just like, okay, if you had a half-decent upbringing, that's wrong. My point being is that those people exist and they've hurt people. And so for the rest of us, and I feel like the type of people who listen to my podcast, when we're having these discussions on the internet, and feel free to call me out on this nicely, because otherwise I'll bite back. But I do sometimes read stuff and just go, what's the nice way I can respond to this? And sometimes I just really struggle because I'm just like, this person's just come at me absolutely unnecessarily nasty. Like the guy, I'm not taking any advice. And I sort of think, this guy can stick up for himself, like big jack dude. So I just said, your mum, whatever, which I probably wouldn't do. But when people just come in with the intent of just being nasty, I don't always call forward my best self. Another good quote. Can't remember who that is. Seneca? We'll say it's Seneca because he says cool stuff more often than not. Anyway, I'm going to stop there because this is already way too long. My apologies. But I just want to thank those people who've just reached out to me and said, thanks for not tiptoeing around these difficult subjects. And thanks for challenging this kind of toxic culture. Actually, I didn't finish my sentence. My point being is, it is okay. Like, everyone knows that being racist is wrong. Most people, know that being racist. Most people know that saying something because someone's fat is wrong. Most people know that discriminating against someone because they're a woman is wrong. But it's become in vogue and okay to go, you're a man, you're white, you're hashtag thin privilege, whatever. And it's disgusting and hypocritical. And I talk about that in this podcast, so I'm going to go on. Anyway, it's mental, isn't it? And so I'm not going to tiptoe around the subjects because it annoys me. And I don't care. I don't care about cancel culture. I've put up with BS my whole career. one day I will write a book and I'll tell you about all the stuff that you would not believe I've put up with. Think of the worst thing, and it's worse than that. Anyway, I can't be cancelled because I don't rely on anyone. I'm just me. I'm not here to be professional. I'm not doing this podcast to make money. Oh, Martin's lost the sponsors on his podcast. No, I don't need sponsors. I don't want sponsors. You can't cancel me from events. I do my own events. People come to see me because they see the intent of my whole career and all of my content. And I don't care about, I want more followers. I would love 150 million Instagram followers so that I could influence them in a positive way. But I don't care to offend people when they need to be told a harsh truth. I.e., I could not respond to people when they comment on my posts saying, you need to change the wording of this because I'm offended. Here's the game. I talk about this game in this podcast that one of these stupid doctors is trying to play to get herself followers. You don't respond to those negative comments. You just ignore them and you let them sit there. That person feels heard. They've got to lash out and they keep following you and you gain followers. When I respond, they automatically unfollow me and sometimes block me. That's the thing that blows my mind. The reason you block people is because they are coming at you, harassing you. Influencers are the ones who block trolls. I'm like, why are you blocking me? I don't know who you are. I'm unfollowing you and blocking you. Why? So that I won't slide into your DMs and tell you how offended I am that you're using, you called it black coffee or you called it a white coffee and that's wrong, or unbelievable. Anyway. Right, much love. I hope you enjoy this podcast episode. Yeah. Okay, so hello everyone. Hello, my lovely podcast listeners. I'm just about to record a podcast on sugar. And, maybe 2 podcasts on sugar and maybe even a third one as part of a little series discussing quality versus quantity, quality of food versus quantity of food, or quality of calories versus quantity of calories, if that's such a thing. But before that, I just walked through here. I was warming up the room because my heating's broken. Still, it's being fixed tomorrow, I hope. I was reading some DMs whilst the room was warming up, and it reminded me of the absurdity of some of the stuff that's gone on my Instagram recently. Essentially, people saying, and I don't know why I'm recording this, I'm not an expert, this is me just using my podcast to speak, because in a way, people like me will never get TV shows, but I know I have a very small group of intelligent, I'll use the term loyal, followers, fans, listeners, friends, colleagues who listen to me for whatever reason, and I think to some extent probably listen to me just to hear someone sane talking about anything. So I'm just going to speak on this very briefly. Don't know to what end, but essentially the idea that people are now, like, I wasn't particularly outspoken, because why would I be, but about the whole race discussions that kicked off in 2019. I guess a lot more globally in recent years than I've ever seen before. But now there's this flipping discussion over how BMI is racist and BMI is a tool for oppression, and how just all sorts of crazy talk. The thing I specifically want to talk about is how there's this idea that you can't have an opinion if you aren't fat. And I'm using that term fat because that's what lots of these people are doing, and like obesity and overweight and whatever are these bad terms, and therefore we're reclaiming the word fat, which is great. But just understanding that if I start using the word fat, the research shows that both obese, someone who suffers with obesity, or someone who is obese, or someone who is fat, all of these terms lead to upset. Like anything leads to upset these days because people are such flipping snowflakes. And I am actually genuinely on board with trying, like the word retard. I don't, growing up and whatever, that was just, and even now today, colloquially, people just use it as a term or as an insult. And for whatever reason, I decided that I wouldn't use that word to insult people. Not that I was trying to ever be offensive towards people with mental retardation, but just because I thought, there's other words I can use. And oh, you should never insult people. Like, come on. People do act in moronic ways. People are idiotic many a time. This is one of the reasons that I love my term gimps, because people who get offended by me using gimp as an insult generally aren't calling me out publicly and getting upset publicly because they are upset that I'm insulting their fetish of dressing up as a gimp. Hey, no judgment. I've got a gimp mask. Ooh, it's got all good, hasn't it? I bought it for my birthday. I don't know, I know some of you listening watch all of my Instagram stories. I love you lots for doing so. But yeah, I bought this gimp mask. I was like, I'm going to buy it as a joke. And everyone was like, oh, you already own it. Like, yeah, haha, whatever. If I did own it already, I would admit it. I wouldn't lie about it and be proud. But I didn't. I never had a gimp mask. And I looked online, and they're expensive. Good, people, I guess this is a big thing. It's niche clothing, and people make these amazing fancy gimp masks. Anyway, I found 2 gimp masks. One which was like a fabricy one. This is random, isn't it? I hope no one's listening to this around children. I might have to put like an 18 thingamajig on it. And then I found this one on Amazon for like £14, leather gimp mask. It stank, honestly. It was brand new, obviously. It was stank of newness, but it smelled of, I guess it's PVC, is it? And it just smells like fish paste, like the PVC glue you had in school. It just stinks. It stinks like it's been used for something already. Anyway, where was I? I don't even know. Oh yeah, gimps is an insult. Anyway, I choose not to use it. The R word, rword.org, for anyone interested, as an insult. So, but you can't, I am on board with not offending people on purpose, but you need to understand there's almost nothing you can say to anyone at any point where some snowflake isn't going to get offended. So this is why I've literally got it written down here. Here you go, intent. Anyone who's, still, what are we episode? We're on like episode 20 now. I don't know when this will be released. If you're watching and we've managed to get on YouTube and wherever, you can see there. I've got these words: intent, judgment, cancel culture, because of a podcast I was on. I'm holding up there to the screen. Intent. People need to start flipping understanding intent. People have the ability to understand intent. They just choose not to. Because they are gimps and they just want to be argumentative. Or because hurt people hurt people. What a great phrase. And I don't know where I'm going with this. I do want to encourage my better followers and appeal to people's better nature. And I have a better nature sometimes. I saw a good thing, which was like yin and yang or something, or all of us have a dark side within us, or a dark part within us. And it's about growing your light side. And, there's darkness within all of us. There's, your angry side, or your jealous side, or, whatever your poison is. It's not the right word, but we'll go with it. So I want to appeal to people's better side, in that lots of people, these social justice warriors, like, it's annoying when you see someone who's super, like, they're a social justice warrior, but they literally they're blonde, they're white, they're thin, they're privileged, they have money, they've got parents who love them, this, that, and the other, and they're still just this absolute gimp. And they're just moody, and they're nasty, and they're argumentative, and they're self-righteous. Yeah, they're the worst people. Anyway, gone off on one there a little bit, thinking about specific people. My point being is that when we do have these discussions about weight stigma, when we have these discussions about obesity, when we have these discussions about diet culture and whatever, I feel like it's just important to remember sometimes and just show a bit of compassion. Like, if you're like me, people don't get you, and people don't get me. They don't get seeing a thin, white, semi-jacked. Everyone's like, thin. Like, I'm not thin, I'm jacked. I want to be jacked. I identify as a jacked male, okay? Stop calling me thin. People don't get me. Someone who can be compassionate, people who can care about. I did a whole episode on this, didn't I? But it's understanding, if you're coming from that place, that sometimes you're having discussions with people, and it's this whole hurt people. And I get it. At some point, people have to take personal responsibility and not just act like a gimp online. And, just trying to shout the loudest and be the most offensive and be the most woke and whatever. But you do need to remember that, like, lots and lots of these people, like this doctor at the minute who's trying to raise her profile by just being purposely provocative. Like, she's saying it to people in DMs, it's just a game, I'm just trying to play it. Essentially, she hasn't said exactly what her end goal is other than followers, but whether that's fame or money or what. But she doesn't care about evidence, and she doesn't care about anyone other than really her own voice. And it's a shame, but it's worth bearing in mind, as much as people are hating on her, and as much as I have lost a lot of respect for her as an individual, because she initially came on my radar and said, I'm a fan and I follow you. And she even said, I think some polite, discourse around like some healthy disagreement is good and blah, blah, blah. And then promptly unfollowed me and then started just chatting just because I wasn't on exactly the same page as her. And obviously she's trying to talk about nutrition and all of these things, and I'm a great ally for people in the weight stigma world with the kind of influence. I'm a person of influence. Paul Dermody, thank you, Paul, for this. He called me a person of influence. It's like the new age way of saying influencer without having the dirty connotations that have been put upon it. But yeah, so just understanding that she may have been bullied at school. She says she has suffered this. And of course, people are nasty. Oh, you're a fat doctor, you're overweight. What do you know? People are nasty. The unfortunate thing, she's just going around being nasty to everyone, calling anyone with a fit physique or who does bodybuilding gross and, a bit unfair, and saying that anyone who's white or male or thin is boring and has no place in the discussion and can just get lost, basically, because they don't know anything. And you can't be an expert. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? You can't be an expert in anything unless you've agreed. And it's funny because Tim Noakes said the exact same thing. You cannot be an expert in anything unless you've experienced it. It's basically saying that because he was an insulin-resistant individual, he's the only person who can be an expert on it. And now you've got this basically person saying you can't have an opinion even, but you certainly can't claim to be an obesity expert unless you have once yourself been obese or whatever. So, which is ridiculous. It's an absolute farce. Of course, you can't talk from experience. That's a big difference. That's the difference. That doesn't mean you can't be an expert and you can't have expertise and expert knowledge. It's really quite an absurd thing to say. But anyway, so just chatting a bit there about if you have the capacity to check yourself and realize, do you know what, some of these people, they're just, I think I said this somewhere before, they just got a chip on their shoulder. And that's not an insult. It's just people have been nasty to them their whole life because they're fat. And we live in a society where people are nasty to fat people in bigger bodies. I don't say, my friend Helen West, she uses this term, people in bigger bodies, and I think it's amazing. But I feel a bit like a cheat using it when I say it, because it's I feel like I'm stealing her term. And I know it's not necessarily her term that she's claimed, but it is a good one. I feel like that one, people in bigger bodies, is better than obese people or fat people. But the kind of fat positive and fat acceptance crowd want to take back this term fat. Anyway. The main crux of just what I wanted to talk sense about is just this mental idea that you're a man, you are naturally thin, you are not fat, you are white, you don't get to have a say, you don't get to enter the discussion. It's unbelievably hypocritical. What the hell? When did this reverse situation occur that people could be singled out and excluded based on race or colour, gender, body shape, size? Oh, because I'm the oppressed one, I get to decide. No, you don't. All you're being is a D-I-C-K head. Someone said to me, can I listen to your podcast? Are you clean? And I don't really ever swear. Like, I'll sort of mumble something under my breath or make the like sort of sound. But obviously if you're listening with like 6-year-olds, like Wally could spell, she'd be like D-I-C-K. No. Anyway, I have no point to this podcast. I think there's stuff I've said there that can be useful, that it'll just maybe just make people go, oh, geez, yeah, someone calling this BS out. I'm happy about that. I did this post. I did some stories about this. People are like, thank goodness that someone of your standing or your intelligence is talking about this and calling out and not standing for it and not being afraid of the backlash necessarily. I'm not afraid of the backlash at all, but there will be backlash. I've already had so many people unfollowing me and sending me rude messages. I don't care. I care that they're unfollowing me because it's just like, oh, what a shame that you are such a fickle human being. But I've actually I'm being interviewed for an article on business and leadership, which is very cool. I feel super proud or something like that I'm doing this. And where was I? I really went off in my brain there. I literally have no idea what I was saying. That's the first time I think I've ever just completely lost the plot. Being interviewed for this thing on leadership and talking sense and people unfollowing me, and I am a bit upset about that because it shows that they are fickle. Yes, geez, I brought myself back. Yikes. Sorry about that. Essentially, it's this thing of just not caring way too much about the positive things that people think about you. And I think Gary Vee actually is someone who talks about this. I can picture actually a cartoon of his where he's got his fingers in his ears and one side everyone's saying good stuff and the other side everyone's saying bad stuff, but you just ignore both and you don't really put too much weight in other people's opinions. And this is the thing, I've had massive proponents, fans, people shouting about how great I am, just for me to say one thing that questioned the paradigm of how they view things or question their bias, and bam, they just switch off. No, unfollow, gone, start bad mouthing me. It's like, it's sad, isn't it? But I think it's something you learn more and more. It's just like, people are fickle. Social media is fickle. Any sense of like mini fame, this is like for the future leaders, for people wanting to get social media profiles or follow my footsteps in any particular way. It's just like, just remember, you might be the flavor of the month, but people are fickle. And people want you to be successful, but not too successful, or they want you to succeed, but not to leave them behind or get more successful than them, or They want you to win, but not win too much, where it becomes too apparent and it highlights their own insecurities or lack of success or motivation or passion. Like, geez. When you're winning, it's like, everyone wants to celebrate the underdog. And then as soon as you get a break or whatever, or I was saying this to Sarah today, literally, I won't say who I was talking about, but I was like, they're just kind of geeks. Everyone likes to like them. They're just doing their thing. You can't really see if they are successful or not. They're just kind of serving a purpose. There's nothing to hate on, and that they don't make anyone feel bad about themselves. And I was like, whereas me, not by any fault of my own, nothing I'm trying, I'm just being me, and I'm not trying to be showy. I'm just being me and living my life and being happy and doing loads of good stuff for other people. But and people do it all the time. They look at numbers. They go, well, how much is M&U and how many students are there and this, that and the other, and what are they doing and what about this tour and this, they just do these like really simple positive sides of math and just go, all about the money and rich and flashy and blah, blah, blah. Or, look at the number of followers I've got on Instagram. And they don't look at it from my perspective like, geez, I've been doing this for friggin' ever. I've been in the industry constantly grinding and just helping people, not doing stuff really from a great business perspective, but just flipping being there, doing stuff, helping people, trying to unmuddy the waters of nutrition and nutritional science for a long, long time. And my flipping following is freaking tiny relative to the hours and days and months and years that I've put in. And my engagement is tiny compared to people just putting out booty pics or whatever. Instagram hates me. It's so annoying. They don't sit there like, oh, he's got these followers, oh, he loves himself. It's like, it's mental, isn't it? So the world is fickle. Try not to worry too much. People, whenever I put all of the hate that's in my DMs on my stuff, people are like, oh, don't worry, I hope it's not getting you down. I'm like, if it did, I would be a wreck. Of course I don't. I would not be able to keep it on. But that's because I'm happy with who I am and my purpose and all this kind of jazz. And so it's bringing it back to just understanding that some of these people lashing out and fighting, and you see all these things in the comments, like, I just want to encourage my followers, my listeners, rise above it a bit, show some compassion. I'm definitely not perfect. I'll never expect you to be. And I'll always, sometimes, it's like, oh, I've thought of such a good clap back. I've got to do it. I know it's going to be mean, but it'll make people laugh. Sorry, Mom, I'm just trying to show off in front of my friends. Anyway, what a pointless podcast. I apologize. Love you all. I'll bring some science. I won't post this one next, right? I'm going to just hit you up with some studies, some science, some biochemistry, some de novo lipogenesis, some insulin release, some pancreatic beta cell function. I don't actually think I'm going to mention that. I'm just thinking of a big word to say. I'm going to talk about sugar. Yeah, sugar and sugar addiction, some brain chemistry stuff maybe. Some addictive-like behavior patterns, some functional magnetic resonance imaging chat. Anyway, if you just happened upon this one, you haven't found it, go find the sugar podcast, maybe part 1 and 2, and then the other podcast on diet quality and quantity. Anyway, much love. It's probably a terrible podcast to ask this, but if you haven't left a review on iTunes, that's the main place. If you're a Spotify listener, get over onto iTunes. If you've got an iPhone, please just open the app, go to my podcast, go to review section, give it however many stars, either 4 or 5. If you're not going to give it 4 or 5, just don't bother. I'm joking. Give it 3 if you want. It's not 2 or 1. No, just leave it. I love going on and reading them. Geez, I tell you what, Australians. Woo! G'day, mate. Geez, you're a angry fella, aren't you? Ashy Bins. Hey, Ashy, you're leaving me loads of bad reviews, mate? Just loads of Australian people just leaving horrifically insulting reviews. I don't know what I did to annoy them. Anyway, until next time. Love you. Bye.